The morning sun rose over the crystal towers of Kepler 44b, casting rainbow colors across the peaceful city of Zephyr Prime. The towers hummed with soft music that helped the plants grow, made the air smell like flowers. Commander Veltar walked through the peaceful streets, his four thin arms swaying gently as he moved. His skin was clear like glass, and light passed through it in pretty patterns. Veltar had never seen war. None of his people had. The Zephrians had lived in peace for over 300 years. They grew their food in harmony with nature, built their cities to work with the wind and rain, spent their time learning about the stars and creating beautiful art. Their bones were light and hollow like bird bones, perfect for their world where gravity was weak and the air was soft. Everything changed when the dark ships appeared at the edge of their solar system. Veltar stood in the communication center, watching the large screen that showed space around their world. Hundreds of black ships moved toward them like angry storm clouds. Each ship was covered in thick metal armor and bristled with weapons. They moved in perfect lines, like soldiers marching to war. "Sir," said Officer Kylene, her voice shaking, "the ships belong to the Korth Imperium. They are sending us a message." The screen flickered, and a face appeared that made Veltar step backward in fear. The Korth commander had gray skin like old metal, small red eyes, and teeth sharp as knives. Heavy armor covered his body, and scars crossed his face like old battle wounds. "I am War Leader Zephr of the Korth Imperium," the alien growled. "Your world now belongs to us. You will surrender in one cycle of your star, or we will take it by force. Your people will serve as decorations in our great halls. Your cities will become monuments to Korth power." The message ended, leaving the communication center in terrible silence. Veltar looked around at his people. They were artists, scientists, and gardeners. None of them knew how to fight. Their ships were built for exploring and learning, not for war. "How many weapons do we have?" Veltar asked quietly. Officer Memdar checked his datapad. "We have 12 patrol ships, sir. They have basic shields and small energy beams for clearing space debris. Nothing that could hurt a warship." "How many ships do the Korth have?" "Over 200, sir. Each one is 10 times larger than our biggest ship." Veltar felt his heart sink. His people had no chance against such a force. The Korth were famous across the galaxy for their cruelty. They did not just conquer worlds, they destroyed everything beautiful about them. They turned gardens into factories, art into weapons, and free people into slaves. "Send messages to all the civilizations we know," Veltar ordered. "Ask for help. Offer them anything we have, our knowledge of growing things, our star maps, our art. Someone must help us." The first response came from the Mentari Collective. Their leader appeared on screen, a tall being with large eyes and a kind face. "We are sorry for your trouble," the Mentari said. "But we are a peaceful people. We do not fight wars. We cannot help you." The second response came from the Hegemony Trade Union. Their representative was a round creature covered in expensive jewelry. "We understand your problem," it said, "but we have rules about not getting involved in wars. It is bad for business. We cannot help you." The third response came from the Academic Council of Rigel. Their message was long and full of big words, but it meant the same thing. They would not help. Veltar sat in his chair, feeling hopeless. His people had reached out to every civilization they knew, and no one would help them. In one day, the Korth would arrive, and his beautiful world would become a place of slavery and death. Then the fourth message arrived. The signal was different from the others. It was rough and full of static, like it came from very far away. The technology seemed old compared to the smooth messages from other civilizations. When the face appeared on screen, Veltar was surprised. The being looked similar to Veltar's people in some ways. It had 2 arms, 2 legs, and 1 head. But where Zephrians were thin and delicate, this creature was solid and strong. Its skin was dark from sun, and small scars marked its face. Its eyes were hard, like someone who had seen many battles. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force," the being said. Its voice was rough but confident. We got your message asking for help. I want you to know that humanity is coming. We'll be there in 3 days. Hold on until we arrive." Veltar stared at the message in confusion. "Humanity?" he said to his officers. "What kind of name is that for a species?" Officer Kylene checked. "The star charts." "Sir, the message came from a small system near the edge of the galaxy. The system has only one world that can support life. It is called Earth." "What do we know about these humans?" Veltar asked. "Very little, sir. Their world is not part of any galactic union. They have never made contact with the major civilizations. Most species think they are still too primitive for space travel." Veltar looked at the message again. Captain Jake Morrison did not look primitive. He looked dangerous, like a predator. But he also looked like someone who kept his promises. "How many ships are they bringing?" asked Officer Mamdar. "The message does not say, sir." Veltar made a decision that would change everything. "Send a reply. Tell them we accept their help. Give them all the information we have about the Korth ships and weapons." As his officers worked to send the message, Veltar wondered what he had just done. His people had called for help from across the galaxy, and only one species had answered. A species no one had heard of, from a small world at the edge of space. The next 3 days passed slowly. The Korth ships moved closer, their weapons charging for the attack, and Veltar's people prepared as best they could, moving into underground shelters and hiding their most precious art and knowledge. On the 3rd day, space near Kepler 44 to be suddenly filled with new ships. But these were not the sleek, beautiful vessels that most civilizations built. The human ships looked like they were made for war. Had thick armor, many weapons, and scars from old battles. The largest ship sent a message. Captain Jake Morrison appeared again, but this time he was wearing a military uniform and standing on what looked like a warship's bridge. "Commander Veltar, this is Captain Morrison. We are here as promised. I want you to move all your people to safety. We are about to show the Korth what happens when they threaten innocent people." Veltar counted the human ships on his screen. There were only 57 of them, facing over 200 Korth warships. It seemed impossible that such a small force could win. But something about Captain Morrison's voice made Veltar believe. The human did not sound worried or afraid. He sounded angry, like someone who had been personally insulted by the Korth threat. "Captain Morrison," Veltar said. "Carefully, are you sure you can win with so few ships?" The human's smile was cold as winter steel. "Commander, you called for help, and we answered. That makes you our friends now." And humans never let their friends down. As the human ships moved into battle formation, Veltar realized that his people had not just called for help. It awakened something that had been sleeping at the edge of the galaxy, something that the Korth Imperium was about to learn they should have left alone. The battle for Kepler 4 for 2b was about to begin. Galaxy would never be the same. The human fleet that came out of hyperspace looked like nothing Veltar had ever seen before. Most civilized species built their ships to look beautiful, with smooth curves and bright colors that pleased the eye. The human ships were different. They were made of dark metal with sharp angles and thick armor. Every ship bore the marks of old battles, dents, scratches, and patches where repairs had been made. The largest ship was called the UES Defiance. It looked like a mountain of metal and weapons floating in space. Its hull was covered with gun turrets, and its engines glowed with angry red fire. Veltar could see smaller ships attached to its sides like baby birds clinging to their mother. The message came from the Defiance. Captain Jake Morrison appeared on the screen again, but now Veltar could see more of him. The human was shorter and thicker than a Zephrian, with muscles that showed even through his uniform. His face was marked with small scars, and his hands looked strong enough to crush stone. Behind him, other humans moved quickly around what was clearly a warship's bridge. "Commander Veltar," Captain Morrison said, "I need to meet with you in person. We need to talk about how to handle the Korth before they get here." Veltar felt nervous. He had never met an alien species before, especially one that looked so dangerous. But his people needed help, so he agreed. A small human ship came down to the planet's surface and landed in the capital, city's main square. The ship's door opened with a hiss of air, and Captain Morrison stepped out. He He was even more impressive in person. He moved like a hunter always, watching for danger. Behind him came other humans, both males and females, all looking ready for battle. One of them was a woman with short black hair and quick eyes. She carried herself like someone used to giving orders. Captain Morrison introduced her as Lieutenant Lisa Park, his tactical officer. Another human appeared as a shimmering image, a hologram sent from one of the ships in orbit. This was Admiral Lisa Rodriguez, a woman with gray hair and a face that showed she had made many hard decisions. Her uniform had more decorations than the others, marking her as a leader of great importance. The humans followed Veltar to the command center, where maps and data about the Korth forces were displayed on large screens. Captain Morrison studied the information with the focused attention of a professional soldier. "Tell me about the Korth," he said. "How do they fight?" Veltar activated the display showing recordings of past Korth battles. "They are very organized," he explained. "All their ships move together in perfect formations. Their commanders follow strict rules about how to attack and defend. They have never lost a major battle." Lieutenant Park watched the recordings with interest. "They fight like a machine," she said to Captain Morrison. "Very predictable. No creativity." "That's good for us," the captain replied. "Predictable enemies are easier to beat." Admiral Rodriguez's hologram leaned forward. "What about their weapons and defenses?" Veltar showed them more data. "Their ships have very thick armor that can stop most energy weapons. Their shields are powerful. Each ship carries hundreds of fighters. They have over 200 ships in total." Captain Morrison nodded. "And you have 12 patrol boats." "Yes," Veltar said quietly. "Ships meant for peaceful exploration, not war." The humans looked at each other, and Veltar saw something that surprised him. They were smiling. Not happy smiles, but the dangerous smiles of predators who had found prey. Commander Admiral Rodriguez said, "You're thinking about this all wrong. You're counting ships and weapons like this as some kind of math problem. War isn't about having the biggest numbers." "Then what is it about?" Velta asked. Captain Morrison pointed to the tactical display. "It's about understanding your enemy better than they understand you. The Korth think they know everything about fighting because they've always won. But they've never fought humans." Before, Lieutenant Park activated her own datapad and began showing Veltar information about human military history. The images were shocking. Humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They had fought with sticks and stones, with metal swords and shields, with explosive weapons. And finally, with the advanced technology they used now, every human learns about war from childhood, Lisa Park explained. "Not because we like fighting, but because our world taught us that only the strong survive. We had to fight wild animals, terrible weather, diseases, and each other. Our planet made us into warriors." Admiral Rodriguez added more information. "Jake, show him the Earth statistics." Captain Morrison activated a holographic display that made Veltar step backward in shock. Earth was a nightmare world. The gravity was 3 times stronger than on Kepler 4b. The weather included violent storms that could destroy cities. The planet was home to creatures that existed only to hunt and kill other creatures. "Your world is beautiful and peaceful," Captain Morrison said. "Ours tried to kill us every single day. We had to become dangerous just to stay alive." Veltar stared at the information. "Hey, how do you survive on such a terrible place?" "We don't just survive," Lieutenant Park said with pride. "We thrive. And that's why we're going to beat the Korth." Another human appeared on the communication screen. This was Captain Ben Cooper, a thin man with quiet eyes who commanded the human stealth ships. "Admiral Rodriguez, my squadron is in position. The Korths still don't know we're here." "Good," the Admiral replied. "What about our other preparations?" "What?" A new voice joined the conversation. Dr. Amy Walsh appeared on screen from one of the human science vessels. She was a woman, with red hair and smart eyes, who wore a white coat instead of a military uniform. "I finished analyzing the Korth armor samples from our database. Their metal is strong against energy weapons, but it has a weakness. Kinetic weapons, things that hit them with solid matter instead of energy beams, will go right through." Veltar was confused. "Kinetic weapons? You mean like throwing rocks?" The humans laughed, and Veltar realized he had said something funny without meaning to. Not exactly rocks, Captain Morrison explained. We use mass drivers, magnetic weapons that shoot pieces of dense metal at incredible speed.
Ow.
Most civilizations stopped using them because energy weapons are cleaner and more precise. But sometimes the old ways work best. Admiral Rodriguez's expression became serious. Commander Veltar, I need you to understand something. We're going to help you, but our methods might seem brutal compared to what you're used to. We don't fight pretty wars. We fight to win. What do you mean? Veltar asked. Lieutenant Park showed him tactical plans on her datapad. We're not going to line up our ships and have a polite battle. We're going to hit them where they don't expect it, use weapons they're not prepared for, and break their formations before they know what's happening. Captain Ben Cooper's voice came through the speakers again. My stealth ships are already inside their perimeter. When the battle starts, we'll attack from behind while they're focused on your main fleet. Another human joined the conversation through hologram. This was Engineer Casey Thompson, a young woman who looked more like a student than a soldier. I've been studying the Korth ship designs. They have weak points that their builders never thought anyone would target. We can exploit those weaknesses. It's Veltar. Felt overwhelmed by all the information. Humans seemed to know everything about fighting, and they had plans within plans. But something worried him. Captain Morrison, he said carefully, the Korth have over 200 ships. You have fewer than 60. Even with all your clever tactics, how can you possibly win? Jake Morrison's smile became cold and dangerous. Commander, you're still thinking? Like someone who's never been in a real fight. Numbers don't matter when your enemy doesn't understand what they're facing. He pointed to the display showing the approaching Korth fleet. They see our small fleet and think we're desperate or foolish. They expect us to fight the way they fight, ship against ship, formation against formation. They think this will be easy. Won't it be? Veltar asked. No, Admiral Rodriguez said firmly. Because they don't understand the most important thing. About humans, we don't just fight to win battles. We fight to protect the people we care about. And when humans fight for something they care about, we become very dangerous. Lieutenant Park closed her datapad and looked at Veltar with serious eyes. Your people called for help, and we answered. That makes you our friends now. And humans never abandon their friends. As the humans prepared to return to their ships, Captain Morrison put his hand on Veltar's shoulder. The touch was gentle, but Veltar could feel the strength behind it. Commander, I want you to get all your people to safety. What's about to happen won't be pretty. The Korth are going to learn why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not because we're the strongest or the smartest, because we're the only ones crazy enough to fight impossible odds when innocent people need protecting. As the human shuttle lifted off and returned to the fleet, Veltar stood in his command center and wondered what he had unleashed upon his world. The humans seemed confident, but they were still outnumbered by more than 3-1. In a few hours, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy would arrive expecting an easy victory. Instead, they would find something they had never encountered before. Humans who refused to give up. The battle for Kepler 4b was about to begin. The Korth Imperium fleet arrived at dawn, filling the space around Kepler 4b largest moon like a dark metal cloud. War leader Zephr stood on the bridge of his flagship, the destroyer of worlds, watching his tactical display with satisfaction. 217 warships moved in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready for battle. Zephr had conquered 43 worlds in his long career. He knew how these battles went. The enemy would line up their ships, try to look brave for a few minutes, and then either surrender or die quickly. Either way, by evening he would be walking through the crystal cities of the weak Zephrians, choosing which buildings to keep as trophies. War leader reported his tactical officer. We detect 57 enemy vessels approaching from the far side of the moon. They appear to be the humans who answered the Zephrian distress call. Zephr studied the human fleet on his screen. The ships looked primitive and battered, like they had been built in some backwater system by people who barely understood space travel. Most of them were smaller than his smallest cruiser, 57 ships, he laughed, showing his sharp teeth. The fools brought fewer than 60 vessels against our mighty fleet. This will be over before it begins. The human ships approached in what looked like a loose formation. Zephr had studied the battle tactics of every major civilization, and he recognized this as a classic defensive arrangement. The humans were probably hoping to make their small fleet look bigger by spreading out. All ships prepare for standard assault formation Alpha, Zephr commanded. We'll crush them quickly and move on to the planet. The Korth fleet began to arrange itself into their traditional battle line, a massive wall of ships that would advance together, overwhelming the enemy with superior firepower. It was a formation that had never failed them. That was when the first strange thing happened. War leader, the tactical officer said, his voice confused. 30 of the human ships have disappeared from our sensors. Impossible, Zephr growled. Ships cannot simply vanish in open space. Sir, they were there a moment ago, and now they are gone. Our sensors show only empty space. Before Zephr could respond, a new voice spoke through the Korth communication system. This should have been impossible. The Korth used military encryption that no primitive species could break. Hello, ugly, said a calm human voice. Miss us? Suddenly, 30 human ships appeared inside the Korth formation, materializing like ghosts among the surprised enemy vessels. These were Captain Ben Cooper's stealth ships, and they had been hiding using technology that the Korth had never seen. Before, the stealth ships opened fire immediately, but not with the clean energy beams that civilized species preferred. Instead, they used weapons that fired chunks of dense metal at incredible speed. The kinetic rounds punched through Korth armor like it was made of thin paper. 3 Korth cruisers exploded in the first 10 seconds. All ships returned fire. Zephr shouted, but his carefully planned formation was already falling apart. The human ships inside his ranks were moving too, fast and unpredictably for his gunners to target. That was when Captain Jake Morrison's voice came over the human fleet communication channel, broadcast so loudly that even the Korth could hear it. All ships, execute Morrison's gambit. Show these bullies what happens when they pick on our friends. What happened next broke every rule of space combat that the galaxy knew. Instead of maintaining their formation and fighting ship-to-ship like civilized beings, the human fleet scattered in all directions like a flock of birds disturbed by a predator. But there was a method to what looked like madness. Each human ship followed a different path, but together they created a pattern that confused and surrounded the Korth fleet. Zephr watched in growing horror as his tactical display became a mess of moving dots. His ships were designed to fight enemies that followed predictable patterns. The humans were fighting like wild animals, with no plan that made sense. They are not fighting us, he realized out loud. They are hunting us. The human carrier ship, commanded by Captain Nina Torres, launched its fighters. Odd. But these were not the careful formation flying pilots that other species used. Human pilots seemed to think their fighters were weapons to be thrown at the enemy rather than precious vehicles to be protected. Lieutenant Colonel Pete Johnson launched his Marines in small boarding pods disguised as space debris. The pods drifted toward Korth ships while the main battle raged, noticed until it was too late. Engineer Casey Thompson's modifications to the human weapons were working perfectly. She had studied Korth ship designs for weeks, finding weaknesses that their builders never imagined anyone would exploit. Human missiles didn't just hit the strong parts of Korth ships, they hit the joints. The sensor arrays, the places where armor was thin. This is insane, Commander Veltar whispered from his command center on the planet's surface. He was watching the battle through his defense sensors, trying to understand what he was seeing. The humans are outnumbered, but they are winning. Korth had expected a traditional space battle. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to enjoy chaos. Human ships used damaged vessels as weapons, ramming them into Korth cruisers rather than retreating. Pilots who should have ejected from dying fighters instead guided them into enemy ships, sacrificing themselves to take out bigger targets. Captain Rachel Morris commanded the human intelligence vessel, staying safely back from the main battle. While her computers worked to crack Korth communication codes, Within minutes, she was listening to enemy commanders trying to coordinate their confused fleet. "Admiral Rodriguez," she reported, "the Korth are panicking. Their war leader is shouting orders that his ship captains don't understand. They have never fought an enemy that doesn't follow their rules." Admiral Rodriguez's flagship, the UES Vengeance, moved through the battle like a sword cutting through silk. Her ship was older and more scarred than the others, but it fought with the skill of long experience. Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Dan Foster, had been in more battles than most Korth warriors had ever heard of. "Target their command ship," Rodriguez ordered. "Cut off the head, and the snake dies." But the human attack on Zephkar's flagship came not from the outside, but from within. Colonel Steve Martinez had led his Special Forces team aboard the Destroyer of Worlds, using one of the boarding pods. The Korth discovered too late that humans had evolved on a world so dangerous that they were living weapons compared to most galactic species, where other aliens needed heavy environmental suits for ship-to-ship combat. Humans fought in simple pressure gear, where others relied on energy shields and long-range weapons. Humans preferred to get close and use their natural strength and speed. The Korth were bigger and stronger than humans, but they had never faced an enemy that actually got more dangerous. When hurt pain made humans angry, and angry humans fought with a fury that terrified their enemies. Boarding team to Admiral Rodriguez, Colonel Martinez reported, voice calm despite the sounds of battle in the background. "We have taken the Korth command deck. Their war leader wants to negotiate." "Negative," came Jake Morrison's immediate reply. "No deals with slavers." Dr. Amy Walsh, monitoring Korth communications from her science vessel, had made a discovery that changed everything. Her translation computers had broken the Korth battle language, revealing the true horror of their plans. "All ships, this is Dr. Walsh," she broadcast on the human command frequency. "I have been listening to Korth internal communications. We're not planning to just conquer the Zephrians. We were going to use them as living decorations in their homes. The Zephrians would have been kept alive but unable to move, like living statues." The human fleet's response was swift and terrible. The revelation that the Korth treated conquered peoples as objects rather than slaves made the humans fight with increased fury. Engineer Tony Lee activated new weapons he had been saving for the right moment. Instead of trying to destroy Korth ships quickly, these weapons were designed to disable them slowly, trapping the crews inside their own vessels while human boarding teams took control. Captain Ben Cooper's stealth ships reappeared throughout the Korth formation, this time carrying special equipment. Developed by Dr. Walsh, they began broadcasting the Korth's own communications across every frequency, letting the galaxy hear in the Korth's own words exactly what they had planned for the Zephrians. The effect was immediate. Other species who had been watching the battle from a safe distance suddenly understood what the Korth Imperium really represented. The humans were not just fighting for one world, they were fighting against an evil that threatened every peaceful species in the galaxy. Captain Nina Torres received a priority message from Earth Command. "Captain Torres, we are detecting rebellion in 17 Korth client systems. It seems that your broadcast of their plans has inspired their subject worlds to revolt." War leader Zephr watched his mighty fleet being torn apart by an enemy he did not understand. His ships were more powerful, his weapons more advanced, his numbers far superior. No. But none of that mattered against opponents who fought like the universe itself was trying to kill them. "Retreat," he finally ordered. "Ships, retreat to hyperspace." The real terror began when Colonel Steve Martinez and his Special Forces team boarded the Korth flagship. The Destroyer of Worlds was the largest warship the Korth had ever built, with corridors wide enough for their massive warriors and armor, thick enough to stop any known weapon. But the Korth had never faced humans inside their own ships. Martinez moved through the dark corridors with 19 other human soldiers. They wore simple pressure suits that would have made other species laugh. Most galactic civilizations use powered armor, energy shields, and advanced life support systems for boarding actions. The humans carried basic weapons, simple tools, and their own deadly skills. The first group of Korth warriors they met were waiting in the main corridor, confident that their superior size and armor would easily defeat the small human boarding party. Each Korth soldier was twice as tall as a human and covered in thick metal plating. They carried energy weapons that could melt through ship hulls. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds. The humans did not try to match the Korth in size or firepower. Instead, they used speed, teamwork, and tactics that the Korth had never seen before. While the Korth warriors aimed their big weapons at where the humans had been, the humans were already moving, rolling, jumping, and striking from unexpected angles. Sergeant Lisa Chen threw herself under a Korth warrior's legs, causing the massive alien to fall forward. Before he could get up, Private Kevin Brown was there with a simple metal knife. Finding the weak spots in the alien's armor that no civilized species would think to target, the Korth had been taught to fight other Korth enemies who followed rules about honor and proper combat. Humans had learned to fight anything that threatened them, including wild animals that had no rules at all. These creatures fight like beasts. One surviving Korth warrior reported to his commander before another human soldier, Corporal Amy Rodriguez, silenced him with moves she had learned wrestling with her brothers on Earth. But the real shock came when the Korth tried to hurt the humans to make them retreat. In every other species they had fought, injury meant fear and withdrawal. Pain made enemies weak and careful. With humans, injury made them angry. And angry humans were far more dangerous than calm ones. Private Danny Walsh took a blast from a Korth energy weapon that burned through his arm. Instead of falling back to get medical help, he used his good arm to grab a piece of broken metal and drove it through the gap in his attacker's helmet. His wound was serious, but his fury was worse. Man down called Sergeant Mike Torres over the communication system. Danny's hurt but still fighting. That's my boy, Colonel Martinez replied with pride. Keep moving. We need that command deck. The Korth discovered that humans were built differently from other species. Their bones were solid instead of hollow. Their muscles designed for high gravity. Their minds programmed by millions of years of survival on a world that tried to kill them every day. When Corporal Janet Deos's helmet cracked and she started losing air, she did not panic like other species would. She simply held her breath, found some emergency tape, fixed the crack, and kept fighting. The Korth warrior who had damaged her helmet discovered that humans could fight without breathing for longer than seemed possible. The boarding party reached the ship's main computer core, where engineer Tony Garcia connected his portable device to the Korth systems. Within minutes, he had access to their entire database. Colonel Garcia reported, "You need to see this. The Korth database has records of over 200 conquered worlds, but they don't call them conquests, they call them collections. They really do treat other species like decorations." Martinez looked at the files that Garcia was showing him. Pictures of beautiful alien beings frozen in crystal cases, kept alive but unable to move. Entire families turned into living statues for Korth homes. Children taken from their parents to become ornaments in Korth gardens. "Send this to Admiral Rodriguez immediately," Martinez ordered. "The galaxy needs to know what these monsters really are." Meanwhile, the battle in space continued with the same shocking results. The Korth fleet, trained to fight in organized formations, could not adapt to human tactics that seemed to have no pattern at all. Captain Ben Cooper's stealth ships appeared and disappeared throughout the Korth formation like deadly ghosts. Pilots had grown up playing games that required quick thinking and faster reflexes. The Korth pilots had been trained to follow orders and fight predictable enemies. Cooper to all stealth units, the captain broadcast on a secure channel. "Remember, we're not just fighting ships, we're fighting the idea that might makes right. Show them what humans think of bullies." The stealth fighters moved through the Korth fleet like sharks among fish. They did not try to fight fair or follow the rules of civilized warfare. They attacked engines, weapons, support systems, anything that would disable a ship without necessarily killing the crew. Dr. Amy Walsh, monitoring the battle from her science vessel, made another terrible discovery. "Admiral Rodriguez, I have been analyzing Korth communications. They have similar collection facilities on 17 different worlds. Thousands of beings are being kept as living decorations right now. The revelation spread through the human fleet like fire. Every human ship captain, every pilot, every soldier suddenly understood that they were not just fighting for the Zephrians. They were fighting to free thousands of innocent beings who were suffering fates worse than death. The human response was immediate and overwhelming. Ships that had been fighting carefully to avoid unnecessary damage suddenly attacked with the fury of people who had discovered an unforgivable crime, Captain. Nina Torres led her fighter squadron against a Korth carrier that her intelligence team had identified as carrying captured beings from a recent conquest. Her pilots flew their ships like weapons, ramming damaged fighters into the carrier's weapon systems to clear the way for boarding pods. Torres to boarding team, she broadcast, "That ship has prisoners aboard. Get them out." Lieutenant Colonel Pete Johnson's Marines stormed the Korth carrier with equipment designed to cut through their prison systems. They found 63 beings, from 12 different species, all kept in crystal cases that kept them alive but motionless. "My God," whispered Sergeant Carol Martinez as she saw the prisoners. "They really are treated like living dolls." The Marines worked quickly to free the prisoners. Using human medical equipment to help beings who had been trapped for months or years. Many of the freed aliens were too weak to walk, but they could speak. And what they told the humans made the battle even more terrible. "There are more," whispered a rescued being from the planet Altair 7. "Many more. On their homeworld, they have palaces filled with thousands of us," Johnson reported to Admiral Rodriguez immediately. "Admiral, we have rescued prisoners from the carrier. They confirmed that the Korth have been collecting living beings for centuries. Their homeworld is apparently filled with these decoration facilities." The Admiral's response was broadcast to every human ship in the fleet. "All vessels, new priority. We are no longer just defending one world. We are liberating an entire galaxy from monsters who treat living beings as objects." The change in the human fleet was immediate and terrifying. Ships that had been fighting to win were now fighting to punish. The Korth discovered that humans had different levels of anger, and they had just reached the worst one. War leader Zephr, trapped on his command deck with Colonel Martinez's team, finally understood what his people had awakened. "You are not like other species," he said to Martinez. "You fight like the universe is your enemy." "Not the universe," Martinez replied coldly. "Just the things in it that hurt innocent people." Engineer Casey Thompson, working from her technical ship, had developed new weapons specifically designed to capture rather than destroy Korth vessels. The humans wanted prisoners, evidence, and most importantly, information about where to find the other prison worlds. Admiral Rodriguez Thompson reported, "I have modified our capture systems. We can now disable Korth ships without harming any prisoners they might be carrying." The battle began to change from a fight to a hunt. Human ships surrounded and captured Korth vessels one by one, searching each for prisoners and information. The Korth fleet, which had come to conquer one world, found itself being systematically dismantled by an enemy that treated their cruelty as a personal insult. Captain Rachel Morris, monitoring Korth communications, intercepted emergency transmissions being sent to the Korth homeworld. "Admiral, the Korth are calling for help from their home fleet, but they're also reporting something else. Rebellions have started on 14 of their client worlds. Our broadcast of their prison facilities has inspired their subject species to revolt." As more Korth ships were captured and searched, the humans found more evidence of the Empire's crimes. Prison facilities, slave markets, entire worlds turned into hunting grounds for Korth entertainment. Each discovery made the human fleet fight harder. Dr. Susan Clark, the chief medical officer, worked tirelessly to help rescued prisoners from captured Korth ships. Many had been imprisoned for so long they had forgotten their own names. Others were from species the humans had never seen before. "Captain Morrison," she reported, "some of these beings have been prisoners for over 50 years." 3 days after the battle ended, Commander Veltar stood in what used to be a Korth prison ship, watching human medical teams work to save lives. The scene was unlike anything he had ever imagined. Dr. Susan Clark moved between beds where both Rescued prisoners and wounded Korth soldiers lay side by side, receiving the same careful treatment. Veltar could not understand it. "Dr. Clark," he asked quietly, "why are you helping the enemy soldiers? They came here to turn my people into living decorations." The human doctor looked up from bandaging a Korth warrior's wounds. Her hands were gentle, even though the alien had tried to kill her friends just days before. "Because that's what we do," she said simply. "We help people who need help. Even our enemies deserve medical care and fair treatment." The rescued prisoners were slowly recovering from their terrible experiences. Many had been kept as living statues for years, unable to move or speak, while the Korth displayed them in their homes. Human doctors and engineers worked together to repair the damage done to their bodies and minds. Captain Jake Morrison found Veltar in the medical bay watching the strange scene of former enemies working together. The human captain looked tired, but satisfied. His uniform was torn and dirty from the battle, but his eyes held the peace of someone who had done the right thing. Commander Morrison said, "I wanted to talk to you about what happens next." "What do you mean?" Veltar asked. Morrison gestured toward the rescued prisoners. "We found evidence of 17 worlds where the Korth had been keeping people like this. Thousands of innocent beings are still trapped there. We can't just leave them." Veltar felt his heart sink. "You are leaving us to go fight more battles." "Not exactly," Morrison replied with a slight smile. "We're setting up a permanent base in this system. The Earth's Defense Force is establishing the Kepler station here. Admiral Rodriguez will command it, and we'll have 50 ships stationed here at all times." "But why?" Veltar asked. "Your world is far away. Why would you stay to protect us?" Morrison's expression became serious. "Because that's what friends do. You called for help and we answered. That makes you our friends forever, and humans never abandon their friends." Admiral Lisa Rodriguez arrived at the medical bay accompanied by several other human officers. She had been working without sleep for 3 days, coordinating rescue operations and planning the liberation of other Korth prison worlds. "Commander Veltar," she said, "I have something to show you." She activated a portable holographic display that filled the air with images from across the galaxy. On world after world, species that had been under Korth rule were rising up in rebellion. The broadcast of Korth prison facilities had inspired dozens of enslaved civilizations to fight for their freedom. The Mentari Collective has asked for our help, Rodriguez explained. "Remember them? They were the peaceful species who said they couldn't help you fight. Now they want human military advisors to teach them how to defend themselves." More images appeared. The Hegemony Trade Union, which had refused to get involved in the war, was now offering to transport rescued prisoners back to their home worlds. For free, the Academic Council of Rigel had volunteered to help translate the Korth prison records to identify victims. "Everyone wants to help now," Rodriguez continued. "But 3 days ago, when you needed help the most, only humanity answered. Your call." Veltar understood the lesson. "You are saying that fear makes people selfish, but courage makes them generous." "Exactly," Morrison agreed. "We showed the galaxy that the Korth could be beaten. Now everyone wants to be on the winning side, Lieutenant." Lisa Park approached with a datapad full of reports. "Admiral, we have confirmation that the Korth homeworld is in complete chaos. Our client species have cut off trade and communication. Their military is fighting rebellions on 12 different fronts. The Korth Imperium is collapsing." "Good," Rodriguez said firmly. "What about the prison worlds?" "Captain Ben Cooper's stealth squadron has reached the first one. They report over 3,000 prisoners in various facilities. Captain Nina Torres is leading the rescue operation." As they spoke, more reports came in from across the galaxy. Human ships were appearing at Korth prison facilities, freeing beings who had been kept as living decorations for decades. Each rescue operation revealed new horrors, but also new hope. Dr. Amy Walsh joined the group, carrying files from the captured Korth database. "Admiral, I have finished analyzing their records. The Korth have been doing this for over 400 years. They have captured beings from nearly 200 different species." "How many prisoners in total?" Rodriguez asked. "At least 50,000. Walsh replied quietly. "Maybe more. Some of the older records are incomplete." The number stunned Veltar. 50,000 innocent beings, kept as living objects for the entertainment of their captors. How can anyone be so cruel? He whispered. Because no one ever stopped them before, Morrison answered. They thought they were the strongest predators in the galaxy. They never expected to meet bigger predators who hunt monsters instead of prey. Colonel Steve Martinez arrived with his boarding team, looking tired but proud. They had just returned from another captured Korth ship, where they had found 30 more prisoners. Captain Martinez reported, "The prisoners we rescued keep asking the same question. They want to know if this is real or if they're dreaming. Some of them have been trapped for so long they can't believe they're actually free." "What do you tell them?" Morrison asked. "I tell them the truth. I tell them that Earth sent its children to bring them home. I tell them that humans don't let monsters win." Over the following weeks, the rescue operations continued. Human ships appeared at prison facilities across Korth space, freeing thousands of beings and destroying the crystal cases that had held them captive. Each rescue ship carried human doctors, engineers, and counselors trained to help the victims recover from their terrible experiences. But the humans also did something that surprised the galaxy. They captured Korth officials and gave them fair trials instead of simply executing them. War leader Zephr, who had led the attack on Kepler 44-b, found himself in a human prison cell that was more comfortable than many Korth homes. "Why do you treat me so well?" he asked Captain Morrison during one of his interrogations. "I came to destroy your friends and make them into decorations." Morrison's answer was simple, "Because we're not like you. We don't believe that might makes right. We believe that right makes might." The trials of Korth war criminals became a galaxy-wide event. Species from across known space sent representatives to watch as humans demonstrated a new kind of justice, one based on law and evidence rather than revenge and power. Some of the freed prisoners chose to return to their home worlds. Others, whose worlds had been destroyed or whose families were long dead, asked to stay with the humans who had saved them. The humans welcomed them all, building new homes and communities where different species could live together in peace. Commander Veltar often visited the growing human base on Kepler 4 for 2B's moon. He watched in amazement as humans worked alongside dozens of different alien species, all united by their shared experience of rescue and recovery. "Captain Morrison," he said, "during one of these visits, my people have learned something important. We thought the galaxy was a peaceful place because we lived on a peaceful world. We did not know that peace exists only because someone is willing to fight for it." Morrison nodded. "That's the hardest lesson anyone can learn. Peace isn't the absence of violence. Peace is what happens when good people are willing to fight bad people." The Zephrians began to change. They started training with human military advisors, learning to defend themselves and others. They built ships designed for rescue and defense rather than just exploration. They joined the growing alliance of species that humans called the Galactic Protection Coalition. Admiral Rodriguez established her headquarters on the new Kepler station. From where she coordinated rescue operations and defense missions across the galaxy, the station became a symbol of hope for oppressed species everywhere. "Any species in this sector now falls under human protection," she announced in her final broadcast to the galaxy. "To those who would harm the innocent, find somewhere else to hunt. To those who need help, call us. We'll be there."
Dr. Susan?
Clark opened the first Interspecies Recovery Center on Kepler 44-b, where rescued prisoners could learn to live as free beings again. Her work became a model copied on dozens of worlds. The Korth Imperium officially surrendered 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 44-b. Their remaining leaders signed treaties that banned the practice of keeping sentient beings as decorations and established reparations for their victims. But perhaps the most important change was in how the galaxy thought about strength and weakness. The humans had shown that true strength came not from the ability to hurt others, but from the willingness to protect them. Commander Veltar, now, wearing the uniform of the Galactic Protection Coalition, stood on his command deck and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling trade routes and answering distress calls. The galaxy was still a dangerous place, but it was no longer a hopeless one. "Commander," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving A distress call from the Vega system. Pirates are attacking civilian transports.